This is your Instagram bio. I help high-performing helpers say fuck you to the mainstream fitness industry. And I love that.
Jim Rohn says the life best lived is the life by design. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm just going to design the life regardless of how difficult it is.
What ignited you to publish at a time where publishing content was not as popular as it is today?
I had a family member tell me point blank that it didn't matter how hard I worked, it didn't matter how much I learned, that I was inevitably going to be overweight and unhealthy like the vast majority of the male figures in my life.
Wow.
How do you balance that integrity inside of your content so you can also get people's attention?
Part of it is acknowledging you're not going to get it perfect ever. You're going to ebb and flow. It's going to take time, but it feels good while doing it. And that's a key indicator for me.
We put in a lot of this one now.
That's up to you. He likes some music.
I like background music. I like old school radio shows.
Mava hates it.
Mava hates it. Yeah.
She is like, take the music away. It bothers me when I'm editing.
Apparently, Hotspot hates it too, but it's fine.
That is right.
I'm
Fun story.
salty.
When we first got into Hotspot, we used to actually record with the background music.
Yeah.
And the producer, after we submitted one of our episodes, they were like, that music has to go. Not gonna lie, I like this a bit. I was like, yes, I like the sounds, the intermittent sounds here and there, but the whole music, the whole thing is like, oof, it's kind of rough.
If you're listening and you're a creator, follow your own instincts, guys. Don't let other people tell you what to do. No, I'm kidding. Guys, welcome back to Content Profit officially. Back to the interviews. We haven't recorded in a couple of days, but you don't notice because you get this episode twice a week in your favorite podcasting platform.
That is right.
And today, Fonzie got to hang out a few months ago in this incredible event in Arizona, and it came with incredible stories of people that were there. And I was a little jealous because, I'd love to travel and meet new people, but, dad now. And
you're usually the extrovert, but I feel like those events, they fit my persona and the type of connections I'm seeking for.
So we might talk about that in just a little bit, but the guest that we have today, oh boy. Yeah. There's a video there involving some very famous music band that I'm very curious to ask about, and also when he started his online presence, which is, a while back.
Yeah, he's been in the space for a while. But what I love the most about today's guest is his mind, man. The way he thinks, he's very introspective, which, I think it aligns with me a lot. We've had guests that like, I feel like you're the introspective brother. And I'm like, I think so too.
He definitely is.
So, when I met him and the way he speaks, the way he communicates, is very powerful. He has a powerful message. He has, a powerful mission as well. And we're going to be talking all about it today. So let's bring him on. Patrick, welcome to Content is Profit.
To the show, baby.
What's up, guys? Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
Dude, absolutely, man. I'm so happy that you're here today. You're meeting the other Luis.
The OG.
Luis of Luis Squared. I did not know that prior to this conversation, so this is good.
I know. I feel like you might be the only one that doesn't know that. I feel like we kind of advertise that. It's our marketing move, right?
Yeah.
That's how we get people to remember us. We're like, oh, we're Luis, and we're brothers.
Tends to be a good surprise for many.
Yeah, but we're here to talk about you, Patrick, and about your content and about how you're linking your content to your business. But for context, right, for people, what are you doing, right? What is your mission? I did tell people that you have a powerful mission, and again, I love your stand on things. And just so people get a glance of kind of like the type of person that you are, this is your Instagram bio. I help high-performing helpers say fuck you to the mainstream fitness industry. And I love that. I love that position. And we're going to be talking all about that. But, what would you describe your mission?
Yeah, well, thank you for the wonderful intro. It's nice to spend time with you both. Luis, one of whom I have yet to meet. It's nice to meet you for the first time, man. So absolutely. You were sorely missed in Arizona when I got to meet the other half of Luis.
Yeah, you would have, maybe it's a good thing because my dad jokes are, top high right now. So I don't think that would have been a good thing for you guys. Yeah,
you and Brian would have had a field day. So
yes. Yep.
Well, cool. Well, thank you for that intro, Luis. Do you prefer Fonzie in this context? Is that why Fonzie exists? I didn't know the
Somehow
backstory.
we know who you're talking to.
Yeah.
so-
Well, the Fonzie exists for my brother's own pleasure because he's like, I want to be the only Luis, but you can call me whatever's easier for you. It's all good.
Okay, Fonzie's cool because in the world that you and I connected in, that was the introduction that was made. But I always want to honor your preferences around your name and your identity. So
Appreciate it.
thanks for that, man. So thank you for the introduction. Yeah, my name is Patrick Ryan. I am the owner, or rather founder and co-owner of Aware Fitness Coaching, where myself and my wife, Megan Ryan, to much of what Luis had mentioned, or Fonzie rather, our role is to help high-performing helpers say fuck you to the mainstream fitness industry. And the reason we came to that conclusion was because through our continuing ed and the work that we're doing, we're coming to find that, unfortunately, by the year 2030, 50% of all American adults will be considered obese. And as individuals who are very, very keen and pay a lot of attention to our most important form of currency, being our health and fitness, my wife and I see some concerning evidence regarding just the future of the health of our country and the future of the health of the globe. And we like to specialize in working with the helpers, the people who see the value in helping people and raising those around them up, so that way we collectively can have a level of health that we have otherwise never thought was possible, and really, really help break people through those mental, emotional, spiritual, physical, social, environmental, existential, and even financial limitations that they had been given to them by family members, society, and help them break through those. So that way we can achieve something we all deserve. It's our birthright.
Yeah. A few things I want to point out here, man. First, the clarity with which you share your message, right? Which tells me,
well, thank you. It's taken a lot of practice.
That's where I wanted to go. That's exactly where I wanted to go. It takes practice, right? To define that message, to test it, right? You've been doing this for, I think, a decade or more at this
Correct.
point, right?
Yep.
And I think it's impressive because I can tell when we ask this question, I'm having a conversation with somebody, and when they can express, their mission and what they do and who they help with this much clarity, it tells me that they've put in the practice, right? And the fact that you can communicate that to others is amazing, right? Because when, again, translating this into content, I don't remember who said this, but it's like whoever can express the problem in the best way wins, right? And you just did that, right? You know exactly how to express it. You know exactly who you're helping.
Thank you.
And then the other thing that I want to point out, which is, a little bit of a marketing nerdy thing, is that you have something that you stand against, right? You have an enemy, which is the mainstream fitness industry.
Yeah, because it spat me out.
Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about that, right? And it brings me back to when I first started learning about content marketing, and a lot of people say you need to have an enemy, right? So that way, when creating a community, you guys have a common enemy, and that's why you see a lot of content from other people, kind of like talking trash about some other industry or maybe even some other people, right? In our world was ClickFunnels, right? When we first started getting into it, funnels were, standing against sales pages. It's like, oh, sales pages is so complicated. A website is so complicated. Let's do a funnel, right? Which is less confusing for your people and it's going to convert better, etc. And then you start, once you're aware, you start seeing those trends everywhere. So I'm curious, right? Was that choice on purpose, right? Standing against the mainstream fitness industry. Why? And also, how does it affect the community and the people that you're attracting into your business?
Yeah, I think that's an incredible question. And a lot of it does come from experience over many, many years. To continue to provide context to you and your listeners, my origin story and my roots in exercise and being a part of the fitness industry in one way, shape, or form came from starting my fitness career essentially at the age of 18. I was going to school at the University of New Mexico here in Albuquerque, New Mexico, pursuing my degree in exercise science. And I knew early on that at that time, this is when I graduated in 2008. So that was during the time, from my understanding, relative to social media, that there was some momentum building. And being from rural New Mexico, so I grew up in a town south of Albuquerque, in a town called Peralta, New Mexico, which is way more rural than Albuquerque proper. We had MySpace accounts. That was like the big thing, right? So we still had dial-up internet. It was not lightning speed. You had to figure out how and create space to be able to log on and build your digital profile, so to speak. So there was this transition from 2008 into 2009 and beyond, when I made it to college, where I started utilizing YouTube and Facebook just as a means of socializing on the Facebook side of things. But when it came to YouTube, really, really getting a sense of what was possible creatively in your free time, because that was before, to give you context, like in some cases, I feel like TikTok mirrors old school OG days of YouTube. Where you had a little bit more creative freedom and agency around the kind of mashups that you would make. I would spend time between classes watching people's renditions of Breaking Bad clips coupled with music they liked, and it was just super, super cool. Yeah. So that was part of my foundation, in conjunction with acknowledging I need to work at a fitness facility, because at the time that was only what was really known. Was like, okay, you go to school, you open your own brick and mortar, or you work for somebody's brick and mortar facility. Yeah. So that was my entry point. Was I started working at a mainstream fitness facility here in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I did that for about 9 years. I started at the front desk and worked my way up to working as a trainer and being a part of that team. But it was very early on, in probably year one of working there, where I knew I was not going to be doing this job long term. And the reason being was I could tell that there were so many gaps that were not being filled in based on the business model of mainstream fitness, primarily when it came to personal training. Was they would market really, really well to a point to making the consumer or the client feel like, oh, I just need to work out with my coach 1 to 2 hours a week, and then all of my wildest health and fitness dreams will come true. When I was able to tell very early on, their wildest health dreams were not coming true. Like, yes, 2 hours a week of working out, we all can agree, is better than none. But I was saying, oh, at least part of the company I was a part of, it became very clear that they were not very interested in actually helping their members and helping their clients get to where they deserve to go. And it let me know, probably around 2012, 2013 timeframe, that I need to start playing around with building an online infrastructure through the use of text message support, phone calls, and email, because that's really what was available at that time. I call it was the digital equivalent of my garage. That was the means of connection and communication I was bridging outside of sessions with clients. And I wanted to really focus on the 23 hours of the day where people aren't at the gym. Yeah. Those lifestyle minuscule adjustments and decisions people make that have the greatest return on the health and fitness they desire. Because I was having clients come to me frustrated because we couldn't solve everything in 2 hours a week.
Yeah. Yeah. I relate a lot with your journey, because I also work for mainstream fitness, in the fitness world, more on the sales side, managing the studios. And, we had, I relate a lot with those type of problems, right? And
you relate with people thinking they were gonna go for an hour and then be jacked
100%. Yeah,
but right after they would go to $1 slice pizza right next to the studio.
Yeah, that too.
Nothing wrong with pizza.
That infamous marketing strategy that we did is like, hey, if you give us your email, we'll give you 2 free slices, and that was definitely not our ideal client. But we learned a lesson right there. But I see when people come in, right, and you can see the consistent people that go in and they get the results, and they have some kind of mentality. But then you also see the other ones, and even though you try to help them out, at that point is their decision to if they want to help themselves out. And so I saw that there. I see that a lot here in the studio too, where it's like, hey, these are a couple of things that we can do on the content side, but you have your messaging is super strong. You've been at it for quite a while, right? You decided, I saw that problem, I'm going to chase it. What was that initial spark? Do you remember that initial spark when it comes to creation around that? We're like, this is my way to start putting myself out there and reaching, the ideal client, or what you thought your ideal client was at the time, right? For us, it was more like a Hail Mary move with a podcast, in a sense. Like we tried so many things and we're like, let's see what happens. And we found our way that way. But a lot of people are like super clear, be like, hey, this is my person. Do you remember that first moment and what ignited you to publish at a time where publishing content was not as popular as it is today?
Sure. That's a very good question. And the first thing that comes to mind for me actually has roots in an experience that was deeply personal for me at a very young age. So, and a lot of it is being looked at through the context of providing, from what I'm hearing, from what you're saying, Luis, providing context around clarity of path, right? Clarity of path and knowing that, hey, I'm not going to have this figured out, but I damn fucking well know that I've got the right path and I'll iron that shit out along the way.
Yeah.
So, for me, that started at the age of 19. So I was in school, going to school for exercise science, and I had a family member tell me point blank that it didn't matter how hard I worked. It didn't matter how much I studied. It didn't matter how much I learned, that I was inevitably going to be overweight and unhealthy like the vast majority of the male figures in my life.
Wow.
And at the age of 19, being full of piss and vinegar, as most of us men are at that age, I said, fuck you, watch me.
Yeah.
I said that internally. I did not say that.
I could tell you.
Yeah. So like, I just nodded my head and I was like, cool, man. Like, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Watch me. And so it was a matter of building a lifestyle around staying healthy. Because at the time I lived in a world that was telling me through family, through society, through friends that somehow this healthy living thing is just like so fucking out of reach that doesn't matter what you do, you can't obtain it. So that was the lens I was looking at life through at the age of 19. It was just like, Jim Rohn says the life best lived is the life by design. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm just going to design the life regardless of how difficult it is. And through setting that intention, it really helped create a really unique relationship with exercise. And what I mean by that is it makes me think about one of my friends, Rachel Rush. She's a world-class cyclist, and she talks about blood flow, or excuse me, how did she say it? Brain flow equals blood flow. Or blood flow equals brain flow is the better equation. And in order to access the kind of imaginative state you need of mind to build a life, to build a business, to leverage against an industry that you know is no longer serving people, you need to create a space and a form of activity that allows you to really, really dive deep into your imagination. And for me, early on in my journey, that was the weight room. And that was because at the time it was of benefit to a degree, but I might have pushed it a little too hard. It was an outlet for me to vent all the stuff that I was going through as well on a deeper mental, emotional, spiritual level, hence why I was so big into Korn at the time. And, the music matched with pushing myself physically, matched with being in school and researching this and learning how all this stuff works, created a unifying experience every single time I would work out, which would transcend just the physical aspect. So it allowed me to get a sense of like, sure, it'll help you look good, but it'll help you feel to a degree that most people can't even comprehend.
Yeah.
I hope that helps provide a little bit of context in answering that question.
Yeah, 100%. It was definitely a mission of vendetta.
Yeah, initially for sure. As a young kid, I was fueled by anger. I was fueled by frustration, not only in people's limiting beliefs towards me, but also that was the only set of tools that I was given at that age when it came to what kind of fuel source I want to use to build a life, which I have since worked through. And fury, anger, aggression does not fuel my day-to-day activity in maintaining the health I want and even the business. But that was the initial piece, was just somebody imposing a limiting belief on me and me for pushing against that.
Yeah, no, that's interesting, right? And I think early in our podcast episodes, like, we had a conversation. I can't remember exactly who it was with, but they talked about anger or like that, or fear could be like the spark to start something, but then at some point it has to like transition into something different. And just this weekend we were in Spokane in a wedding, and my 5-year-old, we were in this lake, and
were you that angry at the wedding?
No, I was like, oh, the wedding. No. That's a story for a different podcast. But I remember, Fonzie was sitting on the dock, and Luca, my 5-year-old, was in the water, and we're like, hey, Lu, why don't you jump from the dock, right? And he's like, no, I think I'm okay. And then Fonzie goes, hey, if you jump off the dock, I'll jump on in the water with my clothes on. Dude, the second he said that, Luca turned around, ran over the dock, and like legit made the biggest jump that he ever did, right? Yeah. And he went from this state of like, no, I don't think I'm gonna do it. Like, maybe I'm a little scared. Like, I don't know what's in the water, to like, heck yeah, I'm gonna go do it. And to me, that was such an interesting interaction, because obviously, you want your kids to be brave and excited about these new things. And with him, we work a lot on new things. And I was like, wow, what a hack with this kid to like, he's like, a challenge is what fuels him, right? And I think like for a lot of people and entrepreneurs, right, we have to find that, what is it that fuels us, right? And for me, I think personally, I like things, right? Like I like, okay, the cool car. I have a Jeep. I love Jeeps, right? It's like for the longest time that fueled me to get to a point where I could afford a Jeep, right? Then for other years, I'm like, well, maybe things are not a good motivation for me. And then, I went to a space where not a lot of things motivated me. Then experiences did it. And then trying to find that as an entrepreneur to keep you moving, whether that's a challenge, whether that's like proving somebody wrong, whether that is like this object that you really, really want, right? Like you were reading the 10X is better than 2X, right? And they talk a lot about the want. So I love the fact that you found the initial fire from a situation like that. And, look at you 10 years later, 12 years later, right? And the incredible position that you're in, helping a ton of people. So I think that's an incredible reflection that I take for myself, to be like, oh, this is really cool because I can see the long-term benefits on how it can help. Now it's like, okay, once that initial fire is there, how do we now transition to be like, okay, I'm helping people. I got to keep this excitement up, or I got to keep consistency up, because that's the hard part, right? Mm-hmm. That's the challenge. When the first like bigger challenge comes in, like the big problem, like, oh, I don't know how to solve this. What keeps you moving forward on those situations, right? Whether that's like creating more, educating more, and finding solutions for your customers.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that y'all are picking up on that element of paying attention to the fuel source, because it continues to make me think about a concept in psychology. I can't remember whose concept it is, but it's essentially your antithesis or antithesis, thesis, synthesis. And I think what entrepreneurs or mindfully integrated entrepreneurs are trying to do is create this healthy merger of their antithesis. And in my case, like in some cases, the dirty fuel that I had to start and use, being angry, being resentful, a lot of surface level emotions that I only knew how to express at that time. And then building, or the thesis portion of things, thinking about what kind of healthy fuel source do I want to build, and how do I find that? What people do I need to spend time with? What conversations do I need to be having? What environments do I need to surround myself in order to create this healthy fuel source? And then the synthesis is the merger of both of those worlds. Mm-hmm. And for me, a lot of that, or many of those seeds, were planted in the fall of 2017. And it created this really, really incredible merger of the physical domain of health, which is your exercise, your movement, and your nutrition, and I like to say, the mental, emotional, and spiritual / existential domains of health. And there was a very incredible merger of all those domains of deep health. Through being in New Mexico, my best friend took me out to the middle of nowhere in New Mexico. And if you've watched Breaking Bad before, one thing that they do a very accurate job of doing is making it seem, articulating the landscape being a main character in the film.
Yeah.
Because in Albuquerque, it does not take very long to get out into the middle of nowhere. And going out into the middle of nowhere, the wilderness of the southwestern desert, I was moved. And I was able to gain a deeper understanding and appreciation to why I need to stay consistent with my exercise and nutrition so I can interact in these spaces in a way that most people, unfortunately, are not currently able to, and be able to introduce the right people to these spaces so that people can get a better understanding of, like, when you take care of yourself, you're able to expand into being able to take care of other people, to support other spaces, to support other communities. And in my world, that's where it becomes more of an environmental, existential fuel source of, like, oh, I'm at a point where eating healthy and staying consistent with my exercise is not a problem. It'll never be a problem because it's in my DNA, and I started at the age of 19. So now we've got to introduce people to what they have accessible in their life, in their home, in their environment, in their city, in their state, that can help create a more continued loop, instead of with the fitness industry, it being so focused on vanity. Yeah. It's so focused on how you look, when we all can agree, living in the United States of America, we put on a good front. We make it seem like we've got it all figured out. It's all super flashy. It's this beautiful, nice, polished thing. But deep down, we've got some mental, emotional, and spiritual work we need to be willing to do. Oh, yeah. And I believe through my journey as a fitness professional, most fitness professionals who are mindful enough are going to be bridging the gap between the physical domain that we've been put in a box to do, and really, really leaning into, in my opinion, the mental, the emotional, and the spiritual domain. And that represents the fuel source for me, especially in being able to get outside and move my body in space and not just in a gym.
Yeah. I love that, man. Like, I love how you tie your mission, right? Again, how it started, and, you know, the vengeance. But I love how you tied it now to, again, a bigger purpose, right? It's not just about being healthy, but it's being healthy because you, right, as the single building block of society that you can control 100%, you can go outside and then influence based on, you know, you having health. You can influence other things around you. And again, when we met, I could tell that you have a huge love for New Mexico and, you know, the outdoors. And I love the fact that part of what motivates you is getting people outside to experience those things. And then they will also, you know, probably will fall in love with being outside and taking care of those environments, right?
Right.
I think it's an incredible mission. I do want to back up a little bit here. Sure. Actually, back up quite a bit on the conversation to make it a little bit. It's a more specific content related question, right? But you were talking about how when you were in the gym, inside of the time period of a year, you're like, I know I'm not gonna stay here, right? My guess is that you saw how some of those businesses lack integrity, right? On the way they advertise the promises they make to people. You know, it is known that a lot of the big box gyms, they make their money off of, you know, people that don't go to the gym, right? Like they put them in these yearly memberships and they're like, cool, they're not going to come, but they're still paying. And they don't really do anything to force them back into the gym, to get them into a healthy lifestyle. Like they don't care, period, right? So you realize this, which tells me this is a guy of integrity, right? One of the challenges, I think, in social media relates to what you mentioned of, you know, the vanity. In the US is the fitness industry is a lot about vanity, right? The six pack, the pecs, you know, and when you're talking about integrity and telling people like, hey, you can have this or maybe something related to this, but it takes a lot of work, right? A lot of consistency. Like people don't market that message, right? People don't really go and say, hey, look, it's going to take you about 5 years to build this and, have the consistent habit and, have a healthy lifestyle.
Right.
So how do you balance, right? Because now we also live in a world of clickbait and, what is the hook? Are we going to get people hooked into our products? You're going to have a 7-figure business in 2 days, right? So how do you balance that integrity, that message inside of your content so you can also get people's attention? Because again, without attention and without people coming into your world, you cannot fuel your business and you cannot fuel your mission.
Right. Yeah. Very, very valid point and good question. So that merger is always a really incredible balance to substantiate, to establish. And the reason I say that is because one part of it is acknowledging you're not going to get it perfect ever. You're going to ebb and flow through. I'll use myself as an example. In the fitness industry, it's easy for people to jump to quick fixes, right? Because one, they don't know any better relative to their journey. So they're just trying what's out there. And to a content perspective, relative to how we've run our business and our work, I've intermittently tried the quick fix related stuff because I didn't know any better. So it was through that guided trial and error, getting a better understanding of like, how am I doing everything I can to stay as authentically integrated as a human being relative to what is my most valuable resource in my health, the way I communicate with other people, the way I communicate with myself. So a lot of it has continued to practice what I preach with our clients. Megan and I preach is you have to build a support system that allows you to pour from a full cup or an overflowing cup. So me really working on taking care of myself so that way when I do communicate through these podcasts, through social media, through email, it's not just extending a virtual handshake, it's extending a virtual hug to people. And people can feel that through the medium of the type of content you put out. I also say that as somebody who's continued to build my level of consistency in those practices. So that way we can then amplify it even more, which is also part of my gratitude for individuals like you both who are willing to hold space for individuals like myself who are trying to grow in a way that I call consciously integrated. Yeah. And, that's been the main fuel source around like, okay, instead of trying to go for a lot of people to reach all at once, which we all know doesn't usually happen that way. It's a slow and steady build. Like you're doing slow and low when it comes to the world of cooking. And when you cook stuff in slow and low in the world of barbecue, things start to taste incredible. Yeah. So if you're willing to be patient, you can have all those necessary ingredients in the larger scale operation that you want, but you just got to be willing to be patient, which is no different than the world of fitness. So it's me definitely taking my own coaching to clients into consideration when it comes to the content and the business portion of things. It's like, it's going to take time, but it feels good while doing it. And that's a key indicator for me.
Yeah. I hear a lot of the energy, right, that you kind of like transmit through your content. And we've talked about that before, right? There's a few elements to creating content, right? Like what you say, how you're saying it. But one of those which, doesn't really come as obvious at first for somebody that might be, getting into content creation is the energy with which you say things. You can say when somebody's not, you can see and sense when somebody's not comfortable in front of the mic, in front of the camera, sharing their message, right? Or how much, belief they have into what they're doing. And me personally, I feel like I get attracted a lot to the content of people that I know they have that belief, right? And I can sense that good energy. Like you said, rather than extending a hand, a virtual hand, it's just like a virtual hug. I think that's a great way to put it, right? It's like, next time I'm going through content, I'm going to be like, was this guy hugging me or just trying to give me a handshake,
or a slap.
Yeah, or a slap. He's just trying to slap me, right?
Run away.
Yeah, and I think that's a great way to put it. And I'm curious, right, on your end, where do you, we kind of explore that a little bit, right? But how can somebody maybe foster that energy, right? Obviously you have a big story, right? With the industry, right? With your own personal life, with your experiences, right? Everything from, like you said, body, mind, spirituality. But I'm curious, somebody, that have a business right now and they say, well, maybe I do lack a little bit of that energy, a little bit of that virtual hug. How can I foster more of that? How can I build up that?
It's a great question. I think of two things. One is a quote by Ram Dass. I don't know if y'all are familiar with him at all. He's since passed away, but he said something really profound in that, relative to the question that you asked, it makes me think of something he mentioned where he stated, the best way for you to take care of me is by taking care of yourself. The best way for me to take care of you is by taking care of myself. And I take that into my second quote where it states, the best way to get people to change is by not telling them to change. It's by inspiring them through your own change. And what I mean by that is, on an individual level, just trying to take as mindful and compassionate of an inventory and audit, so to speak, of how you're communicating with yourself as a means of creating the fuel source to be motivated and do the work you need to do. And trying to really tease out how much of that is fueled by shame, blame, judgment, anger, vengeance, trauma, whatever that might be. And what part of it is actually rooted in positive, playful, reinforcing encouragement, to the point of Luis's son and you getting him to jump in the water. That was playful encouragement in driving behavior change, right? Which in front of your eyes, in the flick of a wrist, in one moment, your son's behavior changes. Like, cool. Fuck it. I'm going to go do it. This is fun. And thinking about what you're doing to encourage playful curiosity in regards to the next uncomfortable step you might need to make in your business and your life, but really paying attention to how you're communicating yourself in order to get that work done. Because if you're shaming yourself the entire time, you're going to get exhausted, because it's a low frequency way to speak to yourself. It's a low energy way to speak to yourself or other people. And we say it in our role in fitness, you can't shame your way into change. You can only love yourself into evolution. And it's just, you got to have a willingness to really lean into that and uncover what might help you in that regard.
Yeah. And you have some, I want to say you have some good one-liners.
Yes.
Yeah. Sorry, real quick. I'm going to hand you the mic in a second.
I will forget what I need to ask.
But I love, again, it goes back to the very beginning where I told you have so much clarity and you communicate so good. One-liners like those, I think they are the evidence of that work that you have put into creating content and narrowing your message to the degree that you have.
Yeah.
Patrick, I love what you just said, right? The playful curiosity in our life, in our business, right? And as you were explaining that, I was going through situations in my head, in my business, and also at home. Like one of them just yesterday, right? Like end of the day, exhausted, kids need to go to bed, they need to shower first, they're not listening, right? And it's like, it's very easy to get to a point of frustration and like just scream at them, right? And at that point, I'm guilty of it sometimes. And then you see their reaction, right? They will not listen, or they'll be in a bad mood, they start crying, and then things go downhill from there. And then on the business side, similar things, right? It might be end of the day. Maybe you had a bad day at home, or something external is affecting you, and then you're not in the right mental space to maybe talk to a client or tackle a call or XYZ, whatever that is. And that might affect not only you, but your team, right? And right. The people that are behind you. So for those business owners, parents, or whatever, we had a conversation with Jesse Itzler a long time ago, and he mentioned like a trigger, right? Every time he flips, like I think he's he has like a necklace or a keychain that he has like in his hand. When he flips and puts it back, it's like action mode, and it's like a trigger that he uses to get into work mode. Now, I'm very interested to know, what is your trigger for good energy? Because we're going to find those moments of low energy that we might not feel the best, right? That is not going to be 24/7 that we're going to be feeling that way. And is there something, acknowledging, for, I think, step one, right? Like you just said, and having the intention to be aware of that. But then when you acknowledge it, there's sometimes that I've realized, okay, I acknowledge that I'm in this pattern of energy, but somehow it feels like addicting to stay in that pattern of energy, right? Mm-hmm. How do I break that pattern? How do I then switch? Is there a trigger that you use or something that you recommend doing at that moment? Because it could be like, hey, I need to switch from this energy moment because I had like a very important call in 5 minutes that might define the course of my business, right? Or I have this incredible podcast interview that, you know, I need to deliver the best way possible. So then the message reaches more people and we can help more people, right? And I think like getting that mental state is so important. So is there something that you recommend people do once they identify that moment?
Yeah, the key, I think you've done half the work whenever you're able to identify, right? Which most people have a really hard time with leaning into that to as much of a degree as maybe they quote unquote should. The reason being is once you start developing a practice of communicating and being able to communicate that understanding or aha or sense of awareness around your own behavior, the second half of it starts to become actually much more easy. So it's all centered in communication, in my opinion. And I think it can be summarized in one simple phrase. The only problems we're unable to solve are the problems we're unwilling to talk about. So if we're going through some sort of an internal transition energetically from being very, very dialed in, focused, getting it done to an environment that is not going to necessitate that, I truly believe there always needs to be some amount of space. It could be a minute, it could be a few minutes of communicating with your spouse, with your child, with your family, with your teammate, communicating that transition and energy, because otherwise we can't read each other's minds. It just doesn't work that way. So being able to create a level of congruency between, we'll just call them energy states of being with family and having, to your point, Luis, 5 minutes before a very critical, focused means of communication and being able to communicate that in a way that is not combative, it's collaborative. And it really ties into not just what you say, but how you say it. So that way the message is received in the way that you were intending it to be received, instead of it being really, really, really sticky, really guarded, really, I would say combative. I know I made mention of that word earlier, but I do believe it's rooted in communication. And the better you get at communicating it, the easier it is going to be for other people to understand it.
Yeah. Now, so awesome. I'm taking notes here like crazy, but also there's going to be times that I'm going to be facing that on my own, right? Like I'm going to be aware of that energy, right? And be like, okay, well, I cannot just call somebody and do that. Like, is there something internal with like, okay, I'm aware of this.
Sure.
Now, is it just comes, it could be.
You go out in nature and you hug a tree. That's what you do.
It just comes down to like a decision. It could be as simple as that, right? I would love to give the listener today a tool where that we find in that situation where like, I'm aware this is happening and I have a choice. Either I follow this negative energy that feels super attractive and that's in my head sometimes how it feels, right? It's like addicted to go there, right? Or this is the other path. And then, you know how in the train tracks, you have like that little lever that you move and then the whole thing changes to the ultra. Okay, what's that lever? Like what can we do, or what do you recommend people do in that case for themselves?
Okay. I appreciate that. And I appreciate you reflecting back this distinction of how it can be utilized in interpersonal dynamics when you're talking with another person, and then how can you take it to yourself when you're by yourself? You know what I mean? So that proverbial lever in mine and Megan's world, we use something called the 5-minute rule. We've all got 5 minutes. I don't care how busy our lives are. We've got 30 seconds. We've got a minute. We've got 2 minutes. And that proverbial lever, through taking 5 minutes in my practice on myself, but as well as with clients, comes down to your breath. Put your phone down, put your computer to sleep, and give yourself 5 minutes to tune into your breath and just do what we like to call a mind-body scan. And just pay attention to what you're feeling physiologically, what you're feeling emotionally, what narratives you might have going on upstairs mentally that may be playing in from an ingredients perspective into the current physiological state that you're in, while also it allows, in my opinion, it allows you to embrace that feeling and become a little bit more aware of it, so you can transition, to your point, Luis, to that other train track.
Absolutely.
As opposed to, as human beings, it just seems really, really counterintuitive, if not impossible, to make 90-degree angle turns all the time when it comes to our emotions. We're not like that. I believe we're more of, think of your favorite artist that plays a super awesome mix or mixtape, right? Part of the fun of music, part of the fun of content, part of the fun of art is the transition.
Yeah.
And how you can mindfully navigate that. And I think it's done through giving yourself 5 minutes to breathe, quite frankly.
Awesome,
yeah,
dude.
I like that. I feel like if I take 5 minutes to breathe, I usually end up in a 30-minute nap. But
I saw a piece of content from like one of our awesome contest prophet, Hall of Famer, George Bryant, right? And he talks about set your ceiling and your roof and your floor, right, for an activity. And in that specific case, they were talking about daily and morning routines, right? So it's like, okay, right. my ceiling is like the perfect morning, which is like 2 hours. I'm gonna wake up. I'm gonna do a breathing exercise. Excuse me. I'm gonna breathe. I'm gonna meditate. I'm gonna do this workout. It's gonna be perfect. It's gonna last exactly 2 hours. You know, I'm ice bath. And then, okay, what's my floor? My floor is I got 3 minutes, and my 3 minutes. I'm gonna wake up. I'm gonna do 5 deep breaths. I'm gonna do 15 push-ups, 40, 20 squats, and that's it, right? So if you allow yourself, and that to me was like incredibly useful, that tip, because man, I fought so much with like a morning routine where it's like, okay, well, I don't have the full 45 minutes. I don't have the full 60 minutes, or sometimes something happens, right? So I'm like, okay,
life happens.
I'm at peace with like anything in between is a win, from my ceiling to the floor. And as long as I do that, it's positive momentum in my day. So like I recently saw that. So I think that's great, because even with the 5-minute rule, right, it might not be 5 minutes. Like that might be, the ceiling, right? But my roof is like, maybe I do 10 very intentional deep breaths, right? At the end of the day.
Yeah. I think the important word there too is intentional, right? And the intention, I remember, book I was reading, Brandon Bouchard, a while back, and he was talking how whenever he goes into a room, he like stops right before going through the door, and he says, all right, in this room I'm gonna do X, Y, and Z. This is my intention for what I'm going to do here, right? And that 5-minute rule kind of reminded me of that as well, which is okay, at the end of the day, it all starts also with a choice, because you have to make the 5 minutes are not gonna be done by themselves, right? You need to choose. I'm gonna take this 5 minutes to create that intention, and then using that space that you created, those 5 minutes or 1 minute, whatever it is, to again be intentional and say, this is what I'm gonna do next, regardless of how I'm feeling right now, right? And also for those listening, it's okay if in those 5 minutes you're like, I'm going to take a break, right? Like maybe what I need is a break, and, go out for a walk and, hug the tree. Hug the tree always works. So I think those are great. I feel like we've explored today an aspect of content that we've, honestly, I would say maybe never explore, right? That deeper energetical level.
Energetical? Is that anywhere? Energetical?
Maybe, I don't know, or English is not the best,
not very good looking. I just remember, like, there's so many situations that I've seen, people walk into our studio, right? And they book this time, they make the time to make it here, to drive all the way, to, look good, and then they might not be on a mental state to do something like that. So I think like this is so useful, and for a lot of people that have been creating for a long period of time, maybe it's something that comes second nature, right? Where it's like, okay, I turn my camera on and I'm ready to go. But we deal with a lot of people that are maybe starting in this journey, that are like, maybe it's the first podcast, the first interview, the first conversation. And there's so many elements outside of this that can affect their creation process, right? So I think it's super cool where it's like, okay, if you walk through this door, we have like a little corner where we take, 10 intentional deep breaths before we start the 5-minute corner, where we before we start recording, that's what we're going to do. I'm going to leave everything outside. And I think that, if we have a routine like that, where it's like, okay, before every interview, before every conversation, before every piece of content I do that, I have a pre-creation routine that puts my mind in this place, I think that energy will translate so well in not only the content that we're creating, but also in the message. And we're going to reach out and we're going to tap into maybe the people that we really want to attract. You know, how many times have we started this show where it's like, man, we just came out of maybe a team call and it's like, we're rushed and it's all this, and maybe the energy is not the best, right? And maybe
your energy might not be the best.
Oh man.
I always perform it.
Sure. Or the many times that, you know, you tell me you're going to be on time and it's like 5 minutes later and I'm like, oh, come on, Fonzie, where are you?
I'm just giving you your space, your 5 minutes. That's all it is. I'm just giving you your 5 minutes.
All I'm saying is that for the creation process, I think that's super useful. And I hope people listening right now are not ignoring it, right? I think it's like, maybe we can make a space for that. And maybe that 5 minute breathing might look like, you know, playing corn in the background and rocking real good, right? Like, what are your 5 minutes?
Yeah, I mean, Tony Robbins jumps on a little trampoline before he goes out on stage, right? Like, everybody has like those routines that, again,
your pre-game routine.
Jesse Itzler with the necklace. Like, again, what is that thing that sets you up for success?
Yeah, awesome. Dude, Patrick, what a cool conversation, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
For comment. Is there anything else you want to add?
I don't know. I think we covered like it was, I feel like we covered everything in a very seamless, organic, it was a good flow. So I don't know that I have anything to add other than we talked about. So
Appreciate
I think we're great.
Thank you.
So cool.
Where can people find you? Where can people connect with you, right? If they heard you, they're interested in, you know, expanding their health, not just on a 6-pack level, right? But beyond that, how do they get in touch with you?
Yeah, best places to connect with me first would be on Instagram. So my handle is Patrick_Ryan, RYAN, fit, FIT. And then for those that are on Facebook, we do have a free Facebook fitness community that is under the name Aware, AWARE, Fitness Community over on Facebook.
I love it. Love that name. Cool. We're going to leave the links in the description below. All you got to do is scroll down, tap them, and join. Dude, Patrick, thank you so much. This was absolutely amazing.
That's right, guys. With that said, thank you so much for tuning to the Content is Profit podcast. Go ahead and follow the show in your favorite podcasting platform and on social media at BizBrosGo.
That is Ranif Patrick here to help you move one step closer towards your goal. Please don't forget to share this episode. And of course, don't forget to leave a 5-star review. See ya.
Bye, guys.